All right, welcome back to another week in Niche Pursuits News. My name is Jared Bauman. I'm in the host seat today, and my co-host today is Tony Hill. Welcome, Tony.
Hey, Jared. Thanks. It's good to be here, man.
Spencer is out this week. He's actually down at FinCon in New Orleans, and I have to say, I want to give a quick shout out to all of our FinCon attendees that know Niche Pursuits. I guess Spencer's been hearing from a lot of Niche Pursuits listeners down there. So shout out to everybody at FinCon this week. Hopefully you have time to catch up on the news on your way home from the conference. But the news doesn't stop. Doesn't matter if FinCon's happening or what con in the world is going on. We've got news to talk about, and this week is no shortage of that. So, Tony, you had what were you on? Probably maybe 6 months ago on the podcast. Very successful episode. Just for people who don't know, give us 60 seconds, 30 seconds on you.
Yeah. So I've been running my own niche sites for the last 18 years or so, and enjoy every minute of it. And just recently joined Twitter this year, or X, and I've been sharing the things that I've been learning along the way. And I've been enjoying the process. So in the meantime, if I'm not working on my sites and I'm on X, then I'm hanging out with my wife and daughter here in Tennessee.
Well, welcome on board. Today's going to be fun. We've got a lot of news to talk about. I think a lot of topics that you probably have a lot of interest in as well. So let's get to it. And, of course, for those of you watching on YouTube, I am going to share my screen, which has become kind of the running joke around here in terms of whether or not I can pull it off or not. But let's go ahead and kick off with our first topic of the day. Before we jump into the podcast, I wanted to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by Search Intelligence. Here's a short clip of Ferry from Search Intelligence showing you how their agency built digital PR links to a client's website.
Do you remember this campaign? It was all over the news. It is the most intelligent royal campaign. With over 100 links generated in the world's biggest online publications, this is one of the most viral PR campaigns of 2021. This is how we've done it. The methodology was pretty simple. We looked at the QS World University rankings for the institutions attended by key members of the royal family to discover which royal is the brightest of all. Meghan Markle came out on top, followed by Kate Middleton and Prince William. We put these findings in a press release and sent it to mainstream media and journalists who write about royals. From Russia to the UK, the US, Vietnam and Japan, this story got massive coverage, landing over 100 links and created a massive buzz on social media. Simple research, but a great story that journalists love to write about. I hope this will put you on fire and will give you inspiration.
If you want similar link building PR campaigns for your website, head to search-intelligence.co.uk and get in touch with them now. So, if you've been listening for the last couple months, you know that pretty much every week we record, we have what is a Google update happening. Obviously, we had the August core update that was going on. We had the then September helpful content update that was going on. Then we rolled straight from that into a double update, October core update and the October spam update. Well, we can now report that as of Thursday morning, the October core update is done. It was finished on the 19th, so just over a 2-week rollout. Google Search Console reported. I think the spam update is still going on. I don't know, Tony, have you heard anything about the spam update?
Still going.
It's still going, okay. So we're going to talk about the core update. Now, a lot of what we're going to be talking about today has to do with kind of speculation on what was going on prior to it wrapping up. I don't think I've seen any articles out yet about what's happening since it finished, but I think a lot of people are reporting a ton of volatility here. I've got a Search Engine Roundtable article up here that says Google search volatility heats up as core update and spam update rollout. Before we dive into some of the details here, I mean, you have access to a good number of sites, obviously your own, but other people you talk to. What are your thoughts on the core update specifically, especially for all of those of us coming out of what might have been a pretty brutal helpful content update?
Yeah, if I recall, it seems to be very similar to the helpful content update, and that like halfway through almost is when sites started to get slammed by it, and seeing the majority of sites that at least that I'm aware of that were hit by the helpful content update were also hit by the core update, just a double whammy. And there were a few I saw people report they're hit by the helpful content update, and then they saw a little bit of recovery from the core updates, but yeah, Google was just kicking a lot of sites while they're down.
It's interesting because a lot of people were hoping that perhaps this core update getting rolled out so quickly after the helpful content update would be a potential way for Google to roll back some of the effects of the helpful content update, some of maybe the overreach. I know a lot of people are, frustrated. They're like, okay, cool. Like, we get that you want user-generated content to rank, but really, like, a post from 10 years ago by someone is not necessarily probably the best experience, and people are kind of hoping for that. I think I can clearly pretty definitively say that there was definitely no rollback. It was definitely not I don't think any indication of UGC sites changing or anything like that. So,
nope. If anything, I saw Lily Ray posted on Twitter that user-generated content sites just continue to climb. Like they started in the summertime and then have just continued to ramp up through every update.
Yeah. I think you're right here. I'm going to try to find here it is. We can see that, a lot of the volatility hit on October 10th, which was, I believe October 5th was the day the update got announced. And, you're looking at this SEMrush sensor, and really the volatility didn't hit until 5, 6, 7 days in, which is, like you said, pretty consistent with what we're seeing out of core updates these days. Normally the first couple of days are a ghost town. It's like nothing really happened. But then as we get into kind of some of the details 5 days in or something like that, that's when things start to change. Did you see any effects on any of your sites? I mean, I know you've had a site that took a little bit of a pullback on the HCU. Anything to report on your side?
Yeah, I definitely have seen some traffic drops and ranking drops on some pages. I've been spending a lot of time, as much time as I can, analyzing that, but also analyzing a lot of other sites that have been hit from others. I was more fortunate than a lot of other site owners. Interesting thing about what I've observed is, like for one of my sites, I saw a lot of broad queries that I was ranking very specific queries for a broad query. So I had, like, say, for example, I had maybe a page about, men's suits for maybe men in their 50s. And that was ranking for just a broad query of men's suits. It was showing that for men in their 50s article. But then the helpful content update rolled out and it started to drop all those more like niche or long tail articles from those broad queries, which is an interesting thing because to me, that was telling me that Google was really doing some targeting with the SERPs and bringing in some relevant articles maybe to that particular searcher if they figured out, that there's someone who lives in a certain area or has a certain age or has a certain interest, like they might show a little bit more relevant of an article to them, but they seem to have yanked that for not just my site, but I've heard other site owners report that.
I will throw a theory at you. I don't know if I saw this. I have it on our notes. I think it came from Marie Haynes in terms of what she reported people saying, but there's some people speculating that Google might actually, in this October update, be demoting content that it thinks users won't need as much when using AI like Bard. I don't know if you've heard this. Probably you have. And what you think about that?
Yeah, I can see some cases for that. There definitely are some queries now that I'm avoiding and that I've seen a lot of these niche sites that have been hit by the helpful content update are targeting, and that is anything that can be answered with a sentence or a paragraph and they're done. I see a lot of niche sites that were targeting those kind of queries and they've seen some huge drops. And that's the kind of stuff that I can see SGE really targeting in the future and taking a lot of the traffic there. So, they're also looking at bringing in, they want quality results because they're using that large language model to then scan the top results, come up with some sort of generated response there at the top of the search box. And so they're trying to probably weed out some of these lower quality sites from appearing, in those results as part of it when it's trying to use that large language model to formulate some sort of SGE response. So that could be it too.
Yeah, I mean, so, these types of queries might be like, what color is a mango? Or what's the coldest month of the year in London, England? And things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Easy to answer and not really adding a tremendous amount of additional value by answering that query.
And it could be also that Google is focusing a lot on its query interpretation and maybe less on the interpretation of the content that it's analyzing. And so they're better able to understand the intent, the primary intent, and maybe there might be a secondary intent to a query. And it might also depend on what the person searched for previously. And so they might just be doing some different targeting and using machine learning models to figure out how they can better interpret queries. And it's going to reshuffle the results that are shown for it. So in some cases, it just might not be that you had a bad website or a bad article. It's just that Google is just doing a different and hopefully better job at interpreting the intent behind that query and what users really want.
Yeah, I saw Lily Ray share this a couple weeks ago when there's so much frustration about the helpful content update, and it was clear that Google is changing a bit of how search is being displayed. I think we can say that across the board.
Yeah.
And her response was healthy, like. And I don't want to put words in her mouth. If I don't have the quote in front of me, I always am careful to kind of say that. Like I'm paraphrasing what I remember from 3 weeks ago and my memory and age. And anyways, I digress. But basically that, hey, if Google gets this wrong, grossly gets it wrong, that we should see them adjust it because they'll get metrics back from user patterns. Their machine learning models will see these sorts of things. Now, I understand if you're listening, you're like, oh, yeah, well, I'm not going to hold my breath. I don't blame you on that front either. Don't hold your breath. But from a high level, like Google is trying to deliver a result that keeps their users engaged because that's how they make money. And if we look at it from that standpoint, perhaps that brings a little bit of interest to the things they're doing in the SERPs these days.
Yep, exactly. So it's coming down to that bottom line of we assumed that there was a separation between Google's changes that they're making and the decisions they're making for how they're controlling the search results and understanding every site and where it should be and scoring everything, but also how that impacts their bottom line and their revenue. We used to think there was this big separation of church and state between the ads and the revenue side and the search side, but with this DOJ lawsuit going on, has been quite revealing that sometimes those lines have been crossed, and it does make me wonder how much have they, as the ad sales side of things, have really impacted some decisions that were made on the search side of things.
You would not be remiss for suggesting such things. Previously, to the last couple of weeks, we would be able to say, well, Tony, that's awfully speculative of you, but I don't think it's that far-reaching. And again, if you don't know what we're talking about, shameless plug to go back. We've been addressing all of this stuff in the past couple of episodes of the news, the helpful content update, what it did, our kind of just look at it from a high level, and then obviously this DOJ case, which is exposing a lot of how Google search might actually work behind the scenes. Well, anyways, okay, we've got a couple more topics to hit. Let's keep going here. This is a very interesting one that is, we'll start with the article itself from Mediavine, and the article is Mediavine's analysis, their own self-done analysis of the Google Helpful Content Update. Now, I think this is interesting because on the podcast in previous episodes, we did discuss how, wow, it sure seems like a substantially high portion of Mediavine and or Raptive sites seem to have been hit by the Helpful Content Update. Where did we get this? Well, I mean, I think at the time of us discussing the podcast, there were over 700 comments in a Facebook group, in Mediavine's Facebook group on the Helpful Content Update. And there's all sorts of other reasons, like the type of sites that Mediavine started with were food sites. These sites seem to get hit in broad strokes. So it's really interesting when we read this article from Mediavine that says the Google Helpful Content Update, what our data shows. And I'll kind of highlight it here on the screen if I can. I hope everybody sees that. But of the 10,302 sites represented by Mediavine, 607 of them, or 5.8%, were identified as being negatively impacted by Google's Helpful Content Update. We also discovered 1,170, which is about double, more than double, which saw positive increases to their Google referral traffic coming out of the HCU. Now, I got to tell you, that doesn't pass the sniff test for a lot of us. Certainly, that's been the feedback that's been getting shared. I will share this tweet that maybe summarizes a lot of what people are saying. This is from Mike, and he really shared this idea that, hey, helpful content update by ad network. How many were hit by the helpful content? Let's do Mediavine first, and then a lot of the comments that came out of that came from like, hey, why is Mediavine doing their own analysis here? Where's the transparency? So, want to keep things in perspective here on the podcast and share all sides, but certainly surprising, I think, for most of us that few of sites got hit, but also, have to share that a lot of questions were raised about how it was, how the analysis was done.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, based on what I've heard with their Facebook group, which I'm not a part of, they can be diligent about kicking sites out that are no longer with them. And so they probably would have had a more effective analysis had they just run a simple Facebook group poll asking their site owners to indicate how much they've been impacted by the helpful content update rather than their particular method. And I didn't realize that they had over 10,000 sites. That's quite a bit. And
they've grown.
Yeah, and to only have...
for them because, by the way, they're great at what they do by and large, The vast majority of people you talk to have a very good experience with their sites on Mediavine,
For sure. So, yeah, I'd like to see them come out with one done by a third party who can take all that raw data.
It would be great to see that. There wasn't a lot of transparency in terms of how they kind of went about it. They did share. I'm not trying to say they didn't. It wasn't just like some one-liner. It just feels like there's a lot more people that are in the Mediavine and or Raptive community. I'm not going to suck Mediavine. It's not a Mediavine thing. It's a type of site, right? Like that's really what it is. It's not that people necessarily went down because they had Mediavine in their site. That's not what we're trying to say or I'm trying to say. It's that the type of sites that Mediavine tend to have their ads on tend to be sites we saw by and large at least take like a 15-20% haircut in traffic from the HCU, if not larger.
That's right. Yeah. They're going to be beyond them. I think they're one of the larger networks that will work with medium-sized publishers. And then once you get past, I don't know, like say 10 million visitors a month, that's when you start having your own internal ad sales and working with some larger organizations that, they're not going to share that level of detail with whether they had traffic losses or not. And generally, those are going to be some really big sites and really big brands who seem to weather through a lot of these updates. Yeah.
They did have a topic they addressed in there, which we've addressed on previous podcasts, so I'll just read it out again. This is according to the Mediavine article. The header is our higher ad density settings related to the HCU. They said based on the data we have with more than 10,000 sites, we do not have any reason to believe that sites running more Mediavine ads or fewer were more heavily impacted by the helpful content update. The data about ad density and the HCU is pretty agnostic. They would that would fly in the face of certainly what people like Lily Ray and Glenn Gabe have shown, although they have shown that nuance is probably important here. They would say that data on ad density was what's the right word? Like resulting in a poor user experience. And so I think perhaps the separation that could exist where both of these cases are valid is Mediavine is saying that, hey, we're not talking, we don't have, ad density that gets so bad that it's in the way of a user experience. Its ad density is either minimal or normal or higher, but none of those would reach the levels that maybe a Glenn Gabe and a Lily Ray were addressing when they said that ad density did have an impact. So not trying to overcomplicate it, but perhaps that's where both these sides can exist in the same argument.
Yeah, for sure. At the end of the day, I would have preferred to see more data tables and charts than all those words right there telling a story. They're just crafting a big story there. But
yeah. As we go into Q4, it certainly would be interesting if everyone by and large was like, well, I don't want to risk it, so I'm going to drop my ad density down. Yeah. I know I've had several clients who have said, Jared, that's the first and the easiest thing I did was go into my Mediavine settings and bump down a notch or two. I can count on more than two hands how many people have emailed me and my clients and said that. So, that could have an impact on revenue and stuff. So I agree. Third party would just be a little bit cleaner, right? Third party would be cleaner. But if you want to buy into the data there, then, that is hopeful for website owners in the types of spaces that tend to monetize on Mediavine. So,
for sure.
Man, I feel like we just keep getting ourselves into these dicey topics here on the podcast. Last week I had to pretty much basically say, I hope Google's not listening to this one about the DOJ case and stuff and SGE Lite. But anyways, speaking of Google, let's touch on this article that came out. We're moving into the third topic of the day. It's a Reuters article, and it's titled, "As Google Pushes Deeper into AI, Publishers See Fresh Challenges." Now, before I dive into some of the details, I actually have to pull up my screen. So let me turn over to you, Tony, for a little bit. Just give us a high level on this one, and I'll pull up some of the details here.
Yeah, it was nice to see a larger news organization start to address this issue that publishers are going to be experiencing at some point and in some way. And so to get this further out into the public, I think is good for us in that it's an article that I'm sure Google is paying attention to. And so they did a good job covering some aspects of how this could affect publishers, primarily large ones. That's who they reached out to. They reached out to some executives from some really large websites. I'm going to guess from like, say, Condé Nast or Dotdash Meredith, and had some private conversations kind of off the record about some things. And ultimately, they're concerned, as well as I think any site owner, especially if you're a site that relies on advertising to generate revenue. And so I'm glad this one came out. It's just bringing that awareness, and hopefully that just continues to put pressure on Google to find a good balance. They keep saying that they're going to try to find a balance of still driving traffic to sites, but as well as still kind of conceding under this pressure that they're probably feeling of, we need to start implementing AI into our search and providing some instant results and information that people can either get from us, or they're going to go somewhere else, like OpenAI with ChatGPT.
Yeah, it's interesting because this article, for a lot of us who maybe listen to the podcast or who are pretty deeply embedded day to day, week to week in the online marketing world we live in, a lot of this feels very vanilla, right? Like, what? This is old news. We've known this for a long time, but you highlighted it perfectly. Like, no, this is Reuters. Like, this is an article that's targeting the general population and kind of highlighting a lot of the things that we probably have been discussing in our small, intricate circles for quite a while now. And it's so good to see this out there. I mean, it highlights the idea. I think it makes a nice case. To publishers, the new search tool is the latest red flag in a decades-long relationship in which they have both struggled to compete against Google for online advertising and yet relied on the tech giant for search traffic. I think the buzz paragraph of all, let me see if I can find it, is a quote from Forrester Research senior analyst. Is that Nikhil Lay? I hope I'm saying that right. I apologize if I butchered her name or his name. I don't actually know. One way or the other. Even so, he believes. So SG, here's the quote. Let's just get to the quote, Jared. SGE is definitely going to decrease publishers' organic traffic, and they're going to have to think about a different way to measure the value of the content, if not click-through rate. Even so, he believes publishers' reputations will remain strong as a result of their links appearing in SGE. And again, this is from like a Forrester senior research analysis, so it's a little bit different than when even some of the most foremost figures in our little industry speak about it. Yeah,
for sure. And like the case with Mediavine, I'd be curious to know where they got that data from. But I understand with the research firm like that, they keep that to themselves. But is that an average? What kind of sites were they analyzing? I'm assuming they were looking at the current version of SGE. Where they come up with those kind of numbers. But honestly, like gut check, I wouldn't be surprised if 40% would be an average across the board.
So, I mean, last week we talked on the podcast, which I know it was Spencer and I, but we talked about how there's really an emergence of SGE Lite, so much smaller search generative experience. We also talked about how it's not generating, it does not seem to be generating results on nearly as many. You have to hit the button to say, please generate the results here. I mean, I spoke up and said, I would imagine that's because it's not working as well, because it's not getting as much engagement as they originally hoped. We certainly over the summer saw like huge full page SGE boxes. And so, it's a reminder that this is always going to be ebbing and flowing, and what we see this week might not be what goes live permanently, and what we see next week might not be great. Last week, Spencer thought we all agreed, great news. Hearing you say 40%, not good news. We're not going to have you back, Tony. We want good news here on the podcast.
Sorry, guys.
You got to round that out a little nicer. No, I'm kidding, though. But it's just it's a good reminder this is an ever-changing landscape,
Yeah, it really is. And I still think it's very early days. Google says that, maybe sometime by the end of this year, early next year they'll have something rolled out more globally, but I would be kind of surprised, honestly, at this rate. They've got a lot of the financial components they've got to get figured out to make this feasible and to not lose money on it. Or are they willing to lose money on it for a certain amount of time? And I think maybe part of this right now is they're also holding their breath with this DOJ lawsuit going on right now. And what are the implications of that? And
so much for them to be factoring in, you know?
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot going on, right? You got all this AI stuff, and you've got all this. This is a big case. Like, you know, this is not just one of those random lawsuits that just, you know, it makes the news, but it's just really something that blows over. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but it really does seem that this is a landmark case in the general landscape of online media.
For sure. And what's interesting about some of the changes that Google's made, this is one of the things that on our list I'm just going to touch on real quick, is the Omnibox. In Google Chrome, when you do a search in the actual address bar at the top, that's called the Omnibox. I didn't know that's what it was called until it's been reported recently, and that was because of this DOJ case, that it was revealed that this was an area where Google was manipulating the queries in the Omnibox. Well, just recently, this past week, Google was talking about an update that they're going to be making to the Omnibox. That was reported on The Verge, and where they're going to start sending people more directly to websites as much as they can, rather than to Google search. For probably a lot of those will be navigational queries. Perhaps it could be they're going to look at your browser history, like look at pages you were at previously, and go ahead and let you just go right to that particular page that you were at. And so they're going to try to predict which site you're trying to go to, and you're not going to land on the Google search results, which means it's not going to trigger ads. And the article I saw, I think that there was some false information in that they misunderstood, and where I believe I saw in there that a lot of those navigational queries, it said, especially like if you type in Facebook into Google and that Omnibox and address bar, and you go to the search results, a lot of times for branded queries like that, you will see an ad. A company will go ahead and pay for an ad to make sure they get that click, right? And that's revenue. That's money in Google's pocket. So they're for sure going to lose out on a lot of money. But I just find it interesting that they have announced this change to the Omnibox that no one really even knew about, like within weeks of it being released to the public through this antitrust lawsuit going on. So just kind of is that a coincidence? I don't, it could be, but it is interesting timing that they're making this change that is supposed to be a better experience for the users. And it's the exact same thing that they were using to manipulate users.
I'll read the paragraph because I have the article up here that you did have in our notes. And I think the paragraph kind of sums it up perfectly. But now a few things have changed that might make Google more amenable. God.
That's
can't
hard
do these at the end of the day anymore, Tony.
I know.
Run out of words. Few things have changed that might make Google more amenable to this kind of feature. First, it's embroiled in a landmark. Oh, look at that. That's the word I just used. Landmark antitrust lawsuit that alleges Google is a search monopoly and abuses its power at consumers' expense. Second, as Google embraces AI through this SGE, which the CEO has said in no uncertain terms is the future of search, every query has become literally more expensive for Google since it has to query its large language models to get the answer. Many of these navigational searches don't have ads anyway, so Google might actually be happy to get people off of its search results page for a change. Well, there's an interesting concept. Ultimately, maintaining Chrome's dominance, which keeps Google as most people's main search engine, is probably worth a few small feature trade-offs. I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. Just wanted to take a short break and remind you that today's episode is sponsored by Search Intelligence. I've got a short clip from Ferry at Search Intelligence showing you how their agency built digital PR links to a client's website.
What a crazy campaign. How to Sleep on Your Back. This campaign got us links in Huffington Post, Glamour magazine, Mirror, and lots of other great news publications. Let me show you how we've done it. It was so simple. Our sleep client provided us with expert commentary about how to train yourself to fall asleep on your back. They also gave advice on why it's best to sleep on your back. Once we've had this information, we went to Muckrack and searched for journalists that consistently write about sleep and well-being. We've sent these journalists the advice provided by the client, and within 1 day the links started flowing in. Glamour magazine, a DR81 website, picked it up. Huffington Post, DR88, Mirror UK, DR90, a massive avalanche of links blasted to our client's website with this simple yet effective campaign about how to sleep on your back. I hope this inspires, and I hope you'll use this technique to land massive links to your or your client's website.
Are you looking for similar link building PR campaigns for your website? If so, just go to search-intelligence.co.uk and get in touch with them today.
Yeah, we'll see.
It's all wrapped up. I think you're exactly right. It's all wrapped up. I'm glad, just going back to that Reuters article, one more thing I wanted to point out. We've been talking about this in the podcast. If you've been listening, we first reported when it was over 10%, but according to Reuters in this article, we're now at 27.4% of the top websites blocking ChatGPT's bot, including the New York Times and Washington Post. But, and this is what's interesting, that's only compared to 6% that are blocking Google Extended, which, if I'm summarizing correctly, is Google's ability to use your content for their AI.
For their training, right.
Their training model.
But that's right. But then there's a separate opt-out if you don't want to be included in SGE. But if you opt out of that, you're also opting out of the entire index.
Exactly. It's all or nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. Brutal. Well, Tony, well done. We've navigated the news with you. You get used to having to have these kind of bipartisan takes at some point. I think you did very well.
Thanks.
I didn't even tease at the outset. I should have that we still have a bunch of other topics we want to hit upon, which blend over away from the news and into some of the more fun. We have our shiny object shenanigans, which is where we kind of share what's going on in our side hustle world. Not the main areas of our business, not what we focus on with 80-90% of our time, but the stuff we're having fun with, we're dabbling in. And I have some stuff to share. I know you have some stuff on the agenda to share. And then, hey, Tony brought a weird niche to the table. All I've seen is the URL. I've seen nothing more. And I put my weird niche in the agenda, and you asked me, "Is this a joke, Jared?" I don't know if you've been to it yet or not, but
I have.
Oh, you did. Okay,
I cheated.
You snuck a peek. That's fair. That's fair. I get it. So we'll come back to that. But let's let's transition into the shiny object shenanigans. I guess I'll go first as kind of the old veteran here. Let's see. Last week I shared that I had released basically like a helpful content update analysis spreadsheet. It was 124 questions that you can ask yourself about your site, and it helps give you a barometer of how it's doing in relation to the factors that most people are sharing might have something to do with that update. It's definitely a new update in terms of what it was targeting. And it's not a checklist of things to do, but more of questions to ask. So that was, that ended up going really well. It ended up at just shy of 2,000 downloads.
Nice.
It is still available. You can go buy it for the extremely large fee of $10. I'm being somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but, at the same time, if your site was hit, maybe $10 is a lot at this point. So you maybe got to be careful about that, right? But, you and I had a fun, we decided to do a Spaces together. So it's actually our second time kind of doing one of these in the last week. I know for you, that was something that you had looked at it and thought that it was helpful. But, we got a lot of people listening to that as well. So anyways, that was fun to do and kind of took off. I talked about it last week on the podcast, and I think I got a lot of feedback that was positive. So that's really cool. Kind of launched that under my side hustle brand, the Weekend Growth brand. And then, hey, I got to talk about this. I think I might be one of the first people to talk about it. So we've been talking for over a month now about how Amazon Influencer, and a lot of people know that both Spencer and I are doing this Amazon Influencer program. And I started in May. Spencer started slightly before that. And the last month to two have had really not great results, to the point where Spencer has shared, I don't really know if I'm doing this past this. I saw him share on Twitter this week that, hey, I'm definitely not ROI positive at this point, and I've been getting really bummed out a lot. And as I shared last week, a lot of the influencer videos have just disappeared from the carousel. And there was hope that when we entered Q4, so October 1st, okay, that'd reappear. Maybe that was just September they're testing, because they do test a lot in this. October 1st hit, they did not reappear. Then it's like, okay, this Prime Day deals is coming. Maybe we will see them reappear for that. That's going to be the kickoff to the Q4 season for them. They did not reappear. And lo and behold, though, 2 days ago, all of a sudden, I log into my account and the clicks have just about tripled. And so I pop back over, I do a couple Amazon queries, and bam, there we are. We've got the carousels back at the bottom. And so we're only a day or two into this, but clicks have gone back up 2 to 3x per day. And usually, commissions follow that in the subsequent days. So, man, nice. Fingers crossed if you're seeing me on the screen. I got both fingers crossed that this is the start and continuation of Q4 goodness on the influencer program.
That's awesome. Do you know, is there like a Facebook group for that program where there's other influencers in there? And have they reported a similar thing with videos being dropped out?
There might be a Facebook group. But all I have is a few Twitter DMs that I DM with other people. But everybody who I talk to, which is a very small sample size, mind you, is saying the exact same thing. I did message Spencer while he's at FinCon. I'm like, hey, what's going on for you? And he said exact same thing. I messaged Thomas, who was on the podcast a couple months ago talking about the influencer program. I said, hey, are you seeing this? Actually, I think he messaged me first. He's like, dude, are you seeing this? So a lot of our graphs look very similar. So hopefully that does mean it's not, it's rolling out to everyone in the influencer program, hopefully.
Okay. And the video carousels, they look exactly the same? Can you tell that? Did they maybe like do some sort of feature upgrade to it or anything?
No. It's literally like
they just turned it off and turned it back on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
weird.
There's I guess the only theory we could come up with is it's still a fairly rudimentary, seemingly just from the experience you have when you're using the influencer program, and when you see it, like, it does not appear, and there totally could be, but it doesn't appear like there's a lot of like science behind which videos end up staying in the carousel and not. Like I can have some really high performing videos, and I know that because like they have long average watch times, but yet they'll bounce out of the carousel, and then some of my lower performing videos, i.e. shorter watch time, stay in carousel. So I'm not sure there's a whole lot of science behind this. I'm not saying there won't be a lot of science behind it, or maybe I'm just too dumb to see the science, I've admitted, like, I don't spend a lot of time noodling over the analytics of all this, but it doesn't feel like there was a lot of improvements made. It felt like maybe they were just kind of testing what it looked like with them off, and now testing what they look like with them on. So,
Okay. Yeah.
There you have it, my analysis.
Cool.
It's worth every price you paid for it.
Nice. Well, I'm glad they're back.
Yeah, I'm so glad because, I do enjoy that side hustle. And I think at the end of the day, not only for myself, but I know Spencer the same, we just really want to see what it really looks like during Q4 with like a good showing. Like, what does it look like to go through Q4 with the number of videos we have uploaded? Like because that's really when the payoffs hit is Q4. That's when everybody who's on Amazon for whatever they have on their it pays off. So let's just give it a good run so that everybody, to some degree, because we're talking about it so much on the podcast, so everybody can kind of see not only what it looks like maybe in up and down months, but what does it look like at its best performing months? And I'm hopeful that we'll get to just give it a run out for the whole Q4 season of the next 2+ months. And then we can all kind of decide maybe going into the next year or two if people want to do it based on that run of results.
Awesome. Cool.
Well, that's my shiny objects. Let's turn it over to you. I'm excited to hear about what you're working on.
Yeah, so I don't know about your Twitter or X feed, but man, mine has been filled with Google Discover stuff. Now, I recognize I tweet a lot about it. I've been emailing a lot about it, but I've been getting a lot of DMs on there, and I've been seeing other people talk a lot about Discover, and there's a lot going on. So it's just taken a lot of my attention, and I think it's become a shiny object for a lot of people because with this Google Core update that just happened, a lot of sites have entered into Discover for the first time.
Yeah.
We look at Niche Twins. They got into Discover with their local site that they have launched recently. One of the articles that they wrote, and that was just one of the first ones that popped in my feed. But then other people have started to say and show me screenshots like, "Hey, all of a sudden I'm showing up in Google Discover." I'm not surprised, especially with core updates like this. That's when things happen. And that's when sites also get removed from Google Discover. And so I've had a lot of DMs and comments of people showing me screenshots of all their Discover traffic tanking from it. And so it's unfortunately just a revolving door whenever they run a core update and potentially a helpful content update. So the two systems are connected to Google Discover. Oh yeah, there you go. You got the I got that tweet pulled up right now.
I think I deserve a round of applause. Everybody who listens
Good job.
to the
Look at
news
you.
every week knows that this is not my skill set, pulling stuff up on screen. But I got that up while you were talking about it. I feel pretty
Yeah.
let me, you also had an error, and let me get Spencer's tweet up because he also shared some really good
Yeah,
results.
that's right. Spencer had one.
He did, didn't
go
he? Let me get that up.
really viral on there.
Let me ask you while we're pulling this up. I mean, you kind of surfaced, and maybe give people a little bit of a refresher since we're talking about it, but like Google Discover, do you have to have like a certain amount of call it like, I hate to say DR, but like, do you have to have a certain authority level? Because Mike, from what I understand, like his website's pretty darn new. So you've got Mike showing up in Discover. Here you got Spencer saying that he's had the best 4 days ever from display ads on niche pursuits, and he had a massive spike in Google Discover traffic. So like, are there thresholds, or are these thresholds kind of being broken apart now that we have these core updates?
Man, based on what I'm seeing from this particular core update, they had a big shuffle with their algorithm I'm sure they have a certain algorithm that first decides, is a site eligible for Discover? And then they've got one on whether or not they're going to include in particular pieces of content into it or not. And I think they made a big change to into the particular algorithm that decides which sites that they're going to pull into Discover. Because I've seen brand new sites come in and get instant Discover traffic. And then I've seen some well-established sites that have been getting millions of clicks a month for years go down to zero overnight. It's crazy. I have never seen anything like it with this particular Discover update or core update. So it's great. I think Google is surfacing probably better, more relevant, more interesting content for people, especially if they can figure out how to lower the barrier to entry, but still be able to source cool content. And that's tricky. I wouldn't want to be responsible for that, but yeah, it's great. So it's still, kind of a black box to figure out exactly how to get into Discover or how to get back into Discover if you've been dropped. But I think it's worth the time and to really figure out and test and dive into it and learn as much as you can to see the potential, especially because there's a rumor that Google is testing a desktop version of Google Discover.
Good. I'm glad you brought it up. I was going to ask you about that. I mean, Discover's always been mobile only. Now, mobile traffic certainly makes up a lot, if not majority of traffic, but desktop's still huge, right? Like, it's a huge segment that just kind of seemed to get unlocked recently, right?
It reminded me of, have you been to MSN.com in the last decade?
No.
Yeah, it's still. When
you said MSN, I'm like, is that like an amusement park, or like?
Do you even remember what it is? Microsoft MSN.
Yeah, .com for me to even realize what you're talking about.
Yeah, it is still around, and I think that site is still crushing it with the traffic that they're getting because MSN is set as like a default web page for a lot of people who get a brand new Windows computer, and generally it's an older demographic that they don't even know how to change the default search engine or web page for their browser. And so they just leave it on MSN. And basically, MSN is a version of Google Discover. And so I know Microsoft has been milking that for a long time with they're just syndicating content. They're throwing ads on there. And then for a long time, they had editors, but they eventually got rid of their editors and they're letting AI run the show on choosing the content that's going to feature. But I know they're crushing it for desktop. And so I'm surprised it's taken this long for Google to consider doing Discover for desktop. Now, it's not going to make the default homepage of Google look nice and clean with that, white canvas and the simple search box. That's going to go away. But there's already a big culture shift going on with Google. They realize they need to adapt. And this could be a way for them to make up some of their lost revenue with their search results, right? That with this DOJ lawsuit going on and changes that they're making there and with SGE, I'm not surprised that they're testing this because I think there's a lot of money in it.
Well, you have a long track record of getting traffic from Discover. Have you seen a lot of positive effects in the last couple of weeks from this?
Yeah, so one of my sites got knocked out within like 5 or 6 days of the core update, but then it came back in. So there's I'm testing some things, and someone kind of gave me an idea of something to test out to see if I can get back into Discover, and I tested it, and I was back in the next day. Could be a coincidence. I'm still testing it. I'm working with some other people to see if it will work for them as well. But that was just a case of getting back in Discover, not getting into it for the very first time. So I'm happy to be back in for now, but you just never know. And that's something that Google's made very clear. Like, you can't count on the Google Discover traffic as consistent traffic like you can with Google search. But the hard part is for many sites, Google has been consistently sending traffic from Discover to these sites for, years and millions of visitors. And then all of a sudden they just turn off the faucet on them. And that's hard. I mean, it just goes to show the power and influence that Google has over the web. And the whole ecosystem, and so that's where, it's that article like Reuters there that was talking about the influence Google has with the SGE and how it's going to affect publishers. And, I just kind of want to make a quick little plug to Ann Moss. She's working on spearheading a web publishers association, and it's an organization that could be featured in articles like what we saw in Reuters or other national articles that's talking about Google and how it relates to publishers and their search engine and the influence they have, and just having a voice for that. And so I just encourage people to just look up Ann Moss on Twitter, or search Ann Moss and Web Publisher Association, and that pop up, or I'm sure we'll have a link in the show notes, and something to check out for yourself. But because right now, reporters can only interview large executives at large publications anonymously, right? And so it'd be cool if there was an organization, because Google has a lot of influence and power, and that might be holding us back in some ways, as much as we love them.
You love and hate, right? That's kind of the way this game goes. Obviously, it's that way wherever you go. Like, if you make a killing on Facebook and you get Facebook traffic, like, doggone it, you have the same challenge, and I feel like a lot of us went through this years ago with Pinterest, right? I know you have a lot of experience in Pinterest and stuff, so it's a challenge. I mean, Google Discover, it does, when it turns on, man, it feels like a faucet just went wide open. It's like a fire hydrant in one swoop. You know what I mean? Like, that's not the way organic traffic typically, well, almost ever works. But with Discover, it's like crickets to fire hydrant levels of amounts of search volume.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, to go from maybe like 5,000 people on your site in one day to all of a sudden it's like 50 or 100,000 people. It's crazy.
And you get ad revenue on all that. But better hope you have ads
That's
on
right.
that one on that day. Or usually it's not an
sure.
affiliate article. I'll tell you that much. Hey, you've been talking about a lot with your newsletter. Share how people can get signed up if they want to. That's been like the theme of your newsletter for the past couple weeks, I know.
Yeah, tonyhill.co. You can sign up for my free newsletter. And right now, I'm emailing mostly about Google Discover. I just kind of taking on that particular topic right now. I also talk about SEO and Pinterest and other sources of traffic. But yeah, Discover right now, just some of the things that I'm learning, not only for my own sites, but also as I'm currently coaching some other sites to help get them into Discover, or if they're already in there, how do we leverage it? Because it's a very different approach to content a lot of times compared to search.
Yeah.
So
it reminds me of the difference at my agency. We work with local clients, and we work with, for the lack of a better term, like non-local clients. Like, we work with local clients, and like, that's just different. It's not better or worse. It's just different. Whenever you add a location on the end of it, the whole way you do search engine optimization changes from, say, trying to rank for, best Bluetooth speaker or something. So, or, a SaaS product or an e-com SKU or something like that. So Discover, it's just a different set of criteria and things you're trying to go after. So.
For sure. Yeah. And it's weird because all that content's still going to be indexed by Google for their main search engine, right? So how do you play it so that it works for Discover and search? And yeah, but there's some sites out there, they just focus on Discover content only. And they're killing it.
Well, many of you who are on Twitter, the Niche Pursuits brand got kind of pulled in to many different members of the community saying, hey, this was a really good episode on Google Discover traffic. Can we bring this person back? And I'm happy to report, if you're reading the tea leaves, and you're hearing it here first, we're going to get him back on for a part 2 of Google Discover on the interview side of the podcast.
Nice.
So that will be coming. I don't know how soon. It's mid-October right now, but we're going to get some Discover content on the interview side on the Wednesday podcast episode coming up. So stay tuned for that. Well, okay. Hey, part 3 here. Welcome to the Weird Niches. I like the one you've picked. I will tell you this. Yours was on my ongoing list, which is why when you messaged me and said, hey, I just want to make sure my weird niche hasn't been done before, I was like, oh my goodness, I think it has. I had to go back and look. Hasn't been done before. It was on my list, which means I lost another one. But I have fair play. But I'm going to go first here. I'll share my weird niche first, but just a little tease. I totally had yours on my list, and I think it's a great one. My weird niche, and I'm going to go ahead and share the screen here. I think my weird niche, this is probably the first seasonal niche we've ever had in the weird niches, and I am sharing with you today HalloweenJokes.com. As many people have come to know, most of the sites I tend to share are weird and not necessarily performing all that great. This one is no exception here. Halloween Jokes is the tagline is Halloween jokes, Halloween puns, Halloween humor, and riddles. And it's just full of like random articles about Halloween. Here we have 101 spooky Halloween jokes. Here you go. I'll ask you this question, Tony. It's on the screen, so you can cheat.
I can't see it. The font's too small, so you're good.
Why did the witch blow up 20 mice like balloons in the morning?
Wow, I don't know why.
So her black cat could eat mice bubbles. Why did the vampire keep a bloodhound around at all times? It was his watchdog. They're as cheesy as you expect. It does not appear that the site has been updated in over a year. There's a big banner that says Happy Halloween 2022. Nice. It's just kind of your classic like endless scroll of content. It looks like somebody's putting a lot of content up in September of 2021, like 10 posts a day. And it's a classic example of where it looks like this site kind of spanned across and into, other like cartoon pirate jokes. I'm not sure how related that is to Halloween. I guess you could dress up as a pirate for Halloween, but I'll just let it go there. In terms of traffic, it gets hardly any traffic at all. I had Ahrefs pulled up, but I've since gotten logged out since we started the podcast, so I'm not going to try to go back up into it there. But it was ranking
tumbleweeds.
What's that?
It was tumbleweeds. There's nothing there that it really ranks for.
I don't know if you have it up. I think it was like 1,300 keywords and stuff. But it does have some top 10 rankings, and so that was maybe one thing to share. Like there are some rankings still. Like I think werewolf jokes, it was number 3 or something like that for, which this feels like one of those sites that even if you're ranking number 3 for like Halloween jokes, there's such a seasonal component to this. Like you're probably getting no traffic even at number 1 or very little traffic at number 1, and you're just getting an explosion of traffic for maybe 2 days, right? And then that might be it. Do you have any experience with seasonal niches?
No, I never did it. I thought about it. There was one I was going to do about trampolines. And I thought, there's going to be a summertime thing. And then after that, it's going to die down. It's just not worth the time. But otherwise, I try to stick to evergreen topics as much as I can. Yeah.
Well, and my screen is kind of freezing up right now. Never a good sign. Could be the internet, could be the site. As we look around here, like it is something that is, it does have ads on it. I'm not sure who is running these ads. So they are making some ad revenue. We always like to pop over to the About Us page, but it's a very, generic About Us page. So we can't really learn much about it there. I think it's just one of those sites that, to their credit, probably didn't take them a lot of time to set up. And certainly nowadays with AI, right? Like you could probably put this site out in a matter of minutes if you really wanted to. So they do have a contact us page, and you can submit a joke if you'd like. And they have an email address. They have a Facebook page. Let's see what the Facebook page looks like. They also have a Twitter handle. Tony, that could be your next follow.
There we go.
I'm not logged in, so I got logged out of everything when I started doing the podcast here, but. I think seasonal niches are interesting, and I thought it'd be fun to put one in for today because, we talk about the seasonality component, but with AI, like, I don't know, you could probably make a pretty good go at a site like this. There's probably pretty little competition for it, and it's not making much throughout the year, but you might be able to just hit it big. And then what about a Discover play? Perhaps if they've lowered these requirements for Discover, you could maybe get some Discover content around that time of year.
Yeah, for sure. So if you create one of these sites then for every holiday, then you can just kind of ride the wave all year long.
That's exactly right. Like, maybe you just, do like 4th of July here in the United States is big in the summer. And then, you roll right at what's the next holiday after that? There's really nothing, but you roll after that right into, you got a couple here where you got Halloween and certainly Thanksgiving in the United States is in November. And then you've got Christmas and the various holidays around Christmas. And, there's all sorts of other themed seasonal type of websites you could make. But, AI certainly has made this kind of a site easier. Although you have the helpful content update. I wonder how it would fare in that.
Yeah, I don't know if this one would do fairly well here.
Not advice to go into, just exploring the weird niches.
Yep.
But if you are looking for something to do on Halloween, and you, or perhaps you're looking for, instead of saying trick or treat to people who come to your house, perhaps you pull up HalloweenJokes.com and put the site to use. Give them a little bit of traffic, because we know that's probably the only day of the year they'll get it. All right, Tony, over to you for yours while I pull it up here on the screen.
Cool. Yeah, I found this one somewhere on Reddit, and it was shocking, which I thought was also fitting for the month of October and Halloween. But yeah, findagrave.com. It is like it's like a Wikipedia way of being able to get information about people's graves. They basically crowdsource people to go around to different graves all over at least the U.S. I didn't see if they went outside the U.S. And they just go to headstones or gravestones there and take a picture of it, and they log, who did it, who took the picture, and which cemetery they were at, and which city, etc., and the names, and they give them an ID number, and they fill in as much information as they can, and you can go in there and search for family members. You can search. They've got celebrities in there. It's a whole thing. So people are really passionate about it. They've got a company blog where they feature contributors every month, do a little write up on them, because people are just really into going to some of these cemeteries and taking pictures of graves and expanding their database, much like Wikipedia.
Man, it has so many threads of Wikipedia. Look here at the bottom. I've got the screen here. I'm trying to make it bigger. I realize it's probably a little small, but look at the breadcrumb trail they have in terms of site structure. I mean, it's literally mimicking like a very well done directory.
Yeah.
And
I'm impressed with it.
Look at all the pictures. Like, these are very much user generated pictures or submitted pictures, right? But like, you're right. People are very, they're not awesome pictures, but they're clearly, relevant pictures, and they're tagged and wow, this is very interesting. How many pages is this site?
Oh man, that's a good question. I didn't look to see. I bet it's millions.
They have a forum. Look at this. They have a forum.
Oh, I didn't see the forum.
That's been all the buzz these days. Look at the forum, man. I mean, Ask the Community has 47,500 posts.
Jeez. Did you open up a new tab? Because I don't see it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did open a new tab. Sorry. Let me switch.
Habit.
Oops. And I just exited out of the entire thing.
You had to make a mistake at some point.
There it
sharing
is.
Your screen.
Hopefully most of the people who are my biggest critics have dropped off by now. Here we go. Here's the forum. All right. Those of you on YouTube, you got it. There it is. Ask the Community. 47,500. Last post 38 minutes ago by Ron. Man, they got like a whole report site issues with 1,600 posts. People do care about this.
Wow. Yeah, I totally missed that part. I'm sure it's doing pretty well with their revenue. Now, monetization, it's really smart. I don't know if you paid close attention to how they're doing it, but not only do they have ads, but they've got some really great affiliate links. One is you can send flowers to a grave. So when I first went on this site, I was like, all right, who's the first person I think of that I know has passed away? And I just thought of my grandpa. So I typed in his name, put in the city, and found him. Found a picture of his gravestone there, and it was pretty cool to see. Like, now, once I saw that picture, I was like, that's my grandpa's name. My grandma's name is right under his. It had a very personal connection with it. So I can see how people who do like Ancestry.com can really get into it. But anyways, I can send flowers to my grandpa's grave right now if I wanted to, straight from this site. They've got a couple of different buttons there and options, like on the page you got pulled up, to send flowers there. So that was a cool play. I don't think that's their business, but it looks like it would be an affiliate link right there that they're doing.
It definitely.
And they got some sort of integrated partnership because yeah. Or it could be maybe they roll that out into a separate business, but maybe owned by the same company. That's a smart move.
It's very integrated.
Either way,
because it took me directly to buying flowers for Benjamin Franklin's grave, which that was what the one I had pulled up, and the title of the page was coordinated with the website and with Find a Grave, and so it does seem to be a very strong affiliate play, or even perhaps more so, right? But wow, I mean, the flowers aren't cheap, so I've got to imagine that there's a healthy affiliate margin built in there. Not to mention the traffic that you said it's getting. Do you have any traffic numbers on it? I didn't pull it up on. I got logged out of Ahrefs, of course, but do you have any similar web or Ahrefs traffic numbers?
Nope. I pulled it up and then I closed it. I just assumed you were going to pull it up.
I had it to pull up. But I got logged out. I don't want to drag everyone.
I bet they get a lot of direct traffic. A lot of people will bookmark that page.
I think it's really, I think it's really interesting to think about the possibilities. I mean, not to overdo it, but to kind of close on it. Like, it seems like a very helpful site. Like, you were able to discover your grandfather's grave, and I mean, it's not just like, here it is, but it actually gives you a picture. It gives you a picture of the grave, potentially, if someone has added that. It tells you a map, and I mean, it seems like a very helpful site. And I know my mom's really into kind of connecting all the ancestry, so it seems like it touches upon a felt need in a community that is a very, very tight niche, really. Yeah.
Did you see the affiliate play with Ancestry.com on that site?
No, I did not.
So I was on a page and a particular grave, and on the right-hand side, it showed an ad for Ancestry.com, and it was listing family members that they found a connection to from Ancestry.com on the actual page that you're on with findagrave.com. So you can just click on that and you start exploring the family tree. That was a smart play. I don't know how they did it, but
I saw another one at the bottom where you can search an online newspaper for your family name.
I didn't see that.
And
that's cool.
Got to be, I'm guessing, some sort of affiliate play there. When you do the search, I could search my last name and kind of go there. Or an ad, maybe.
But it's a whole thing, man. There was one person recently in the last year or so that I had this conversation with about Ancestry.com, and he just went on for like a good hour about it. He was passionate about it, and I had no idea this was a thing. But once I had that experience with him, and then I see this site, and I'm like, okay, like this is something that people get really passionate about, and what a great niche website.
I was going to say
to build.
What a great. I mean, certainly there's sub niches inside of all this that have probably not been explored and are available. And again, that's a good reminder. We like to have fun with the weird niches, but really there's so many ways, and I think what we're trying to always showcase is there's so many ways and so many ideas, but also just perusing through all the different monetization methods, all the different traffic methods. We didn't even explore the whole, there could be a whole blog side of their that I didn't see, but in terms of content that they could create and around that, certainly as it relates to ancestry and all that, but it just really gets your mind going. I typically leave one of these going, I've got another side project I could start. I have to tell myself, no, I've got enough of those.
Don't do it.
Well, I think that about brings us full circle here. Tony, thanks for filling in. You were great at the news. Obviously, a lot to talk about. We had the wrap-up of the core update from October. We had some helpful content update data coming in from Mediavine. Reuters shared with the world about what SGE might or might not do. We talked about some changes as a result of Google's antitrust lawsuit. And, of course, Google Discover side hustle. Amazon Influencer seems to be back. A couple weird niches, one seasonal, one a bit morbid, but very helpful all around.
Awesome. Yeah.
Everybody, thanks for coming by. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you again next week right back here.
See you, everybody.
Today's episode is sponsored by Search Intelligence. Here's a short clip of Ferry from Search Intelligence showing you how their agency built digital PR links to a client's website.
We got 20 links and placements on massive websites such as The Express, Mirror, daily record, and many more with a campaign about the pros and cons of popular diets. Not bad. This is exactly how we've done it. Our client is a very popular fitness client. We have asked them to provide thorough expert commentary about the pros and cons of the most popular diets. Once we have this information, we put this in a nice email and send it out to 15,000, yes, 15,000 journalists from around the world that write about fitness. So good. And unhealthy. Big publications picked up our story from the email, giving our client massive, juicy, saucy, healthy links that are 100% relevant to their website and that will keep the rankings of the website in a great shape. You see what I've done there? I hope this case study inspires and that you will start leveraging expert commentary type campaigns to land links to your or your client's website, just like we've done it with this campaign.
Thanks for joining us today on the podcast. Just a final reminder that it was brought to you by Search Intelligence. And if you're looking for link building PR campaigns for your website, just head over to search-intelligence.co.uk and get in touch with them today. Cheers.